You expect the Statistician-General to answer that? You must go and talk to the parents, TJ. I would rather have a transparent government and a transparent nation than a government that hides things from their people. And journalists have to go and dig, and it embarrasses government when it comes out. If South Africans wanted me to tell them what they want to hear, I would tell them the economy is growing at 8%.
You're saying that, according to the stats, men cheat more than women?
Well, that's what the stats are saying.
Welcome back to Palatable Politics, where we make politics palatable. Today, we're going to be discussing stats, giving a breakdown of the country, going into employment, going into society issues as a whole. And here to give us insight is none other than the SG. Mr. Maluleke, welcome to the show.
Well, TJ, I'm very happy to appear before you.
Always a pleasure. And it's going to be something that I hope as you guys release more reports, you'll be able to come back and give us updates. But could you give us a bit of a breakdown as to your journey and how you became the SG of Stats SA?
Well, I used to love arithmetic and mathematics in high school. I worked very well with numbers. Then I went to university to study computer science. I failed every subject. So I failed my first year, failed every subject and passed mathematics. So I thought that was the way to go. So I ended up working in Guyana. It was before the end of apartheid. And then from there, I went to Limpopo at the beginning of democracy, where we were setting up a new department, economic development. And as we were starting the department, I then headed statistics, and ultimately, about 30 years ago, 27 years almost, I joined Stats SA from the provincial side and came to head office, and I went through the ranks and ended up being Statistician-General.
Okay, that's quite a story, and I mean, it shows perseverance, and I guess failing isn't always a bad thing. It can also guide you. But can you give us a breakdown of the demographics of the country?
So let us talk about where we are now. We are sitting at 63.1 million people in South Africa. And about 16 million of those are in Gauteng. And indeed, Gauteng accounts for 25% of the population of the country. It is followed by KwaZulu-Natal, that is sitting at about 12 million, accounting for 20% of the population of the country. Followed by the Western Cape at 7.6 million, followed by the Eastern Cape at about 7.4 million, all the way to the Northern Cape at 1.4 million, and the population of the Northern Cape accounts for 2.2% of the population of the country. As we are talking now, Gauteng is leading, but way back 1996, KwaZulu-Natal was the most populous province, but it has been overtaken by Gauteng.
What led to that?
I'll come to that. So if you look at what drives population growth, it's what we call fertility, the number of children born of a woman in her lifetime, live births. We never use men as a measure of fertility. Men are never a reliable indicator of fertility because sometimes you will never know how many children they have had until you attend their funeral. So women live with their children regardless of who the father is. They live with their children throughout. So having said so, now fertility is driving the growth of our population as South Africa. So the provinces with the highest fertility in the country are Eastern Cape and Limpopo. In relation to the latest numbers we have released, the population media estimates, Limpopo is leading, followed by the Eastern Cape.
Do you know the numbers?
Yeah, about 2.46 for Limpopo and about 2.3 for the Eastern Cape. But then when you come to the average fertility, it's sitting at 2.21 children per woman, live births per woman. Now, there are two provinces that are below the national average. That is Gauteng and the Western Cape. So when you look at Gauteng and the Western Cape, means they have the least number of children born. Now, I want to contextualize it. If fertility is sitting at 2.1, it means you have reached what we call replacement. If it's 2.1 or below, you have reached replacement. So you have a wife, and you and your wife have two children. Okay. So you haven't contributed to the population. You simply have replaced yourselves because it's two people replacing themselves.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Now, these two provinces are below the national average of 2.21. And now it means their population, Gauteng and the Western Cape, is not driven by the number of people who are born there. So Gauteng's population is driven largely by people from Limpopo internally. They come in larger numbers, followed by provinces like Mpumalanga, Northwest, and KwaZulu-Natal. The other driver is people who come from outside South Africa. So 50% of people who come from outside South Africa choose Gauteng as their destination.
Do we have an indication as to how many people come from outside of South Africa, both legal and illegally?
We don't ask legality.
Okay.
If we ask people their regular status, whether they are regularized or irregular migrants, they run away. So we would never get a fair indication. Okay. But also, remember, official statistics are used for services. So electricity, water, infrastructure, and of course, when people are using water, when they go to the tap and open the tap, it doesn't first ask them if they are here regular or irregular. If they switch a light on the wall, it doesn't ask them any question whether they are here legally or illegally. It's the same like when they use an ablution facility. The bathroom has never asked them, are you legal or illegal? When they go on a freeway, when they go in the shop, the till has never asked them those things. So, and I'm not advocating for lawlessness, but the Statistician-General is responsible for everyone who is within the borders of our country. So having said that, in Census 2022, 2.4 million people said they were born outside South Africa. It doesn't necessarily say that these are non-citizens. You could have some of them who are generally in the minority, who may have been born when their parents were working outside and they are citizens. Out of the 2.4 million, 45% are from Zimbabwe. So just about 1 million are from Zimbabwe. And then you have people who come from Mozambique, people who come from the United Kingdom, Eswatini, and the like. Those are the ones that take a larger chunk of the number of people who are foreign born. Having said so if you look at the population of Gauteng, it's driven by 50% of the people who come to Gauteng. 50% of the people who come to South Africa choose Gauteng as their destination. Whereas for the Western Cape, while its fertility is down, it's driven largely by people from the Eastern Cape. In 1996 to 2001, people from the Eastern Cape used to go to the Western Cape to work and leave the children behind. Okay. But now they are moving with their children. Whereas with Limpopo, it's different. It's people who come here to work, but the majority of them come here as students. In your ages of 16, 17, 18, they go to university here. You have Gauteng has the highest number of universities. And then once they finish university, they get work here and they never go back and start family. So that is why Limpopo is the biggest driver internally.
Okay, so we'll go on the jobs one for now, right? That people primarily come to Gauteng and Western Cape because of the jobs. Now, our unemployment rate. Let's start with unemployment. What's the definition? Like, how do we get to the figures that we do?
Firstly, you start with what we call the working age.
Okay.
So out of the 63.1 million people, 40.7 million people are in the working age, 15 to 64 years. And then from there, out of the 40.7 million, you have about 25 million who are in the labor force. It's either they are working or actively, if they are not working, they are actively looking for employment.
Why do we start at 15? I mean, one would assume that school only ends at 18, 19. So why would one go and say, okay, we're going to start counting people from 15 who they should be in grade 9?
Obviously, you're asking a critical question, TJ. The age in South Africa of being a measure is 18 years. So we'll say 15-year-olds are young people. When they are at school, we don't count them. But why do we count them? It's because the laws of the country say we must count them. The Basic Conditions of Employment Act, Section 43(1)A says it is illegal to hire a child younger than 15 years. So it means if they are 15 years, they can pick up employment.
If they're not at school.
At school.
But now with the Bella Act, I know this one's aside completely. That one does say, if I'm not mistaken, that there is a requirement, or it would be illegal for a parent not to have a child in school. Would that not now mean that by law, all the kids should be in school?
You expect the Statistician-General to answer that? You must go and talk to the parents, TJ, because if I find children who are not at school and they are working, and the laws of this country say they are allowed to work, I measure them. Okay. And if they are not working and they are looking for employment, I measure them. But if they are at school, I don't count them. So now let us come back to the 25 million. Okay. That is those that are either employed or actively looking for employment. They constitute what we call the labor force. Then from there, we have about almost 17 million who are not economically active. In the not economically active, you have about 3.5 million who are your discouraged work seekers. And then you have the other, almost another 13.5 million, almost, who are other not economically active. And these include your 15-year-olds up to 18-year-olds who are at school, or anybody who says, I'm at school. They may be higher than 18 years. They may be 24 years. As long as they say, I'm not looking for work. I'm not economically active. I'm at home. You also have people who say, I'm too old or too young to work. You also have people who say, I won't work because my husband says I should not work, or my wife says I should not work. They will provide for me. Okay. So now, out of the 25 million that are in the labor force, 8.2 million are not employed. Those are the ones that are actively looking for employment. And about 16.8 million are employed. So now the 8.2 million, when you divide it by 25 million, gives us the 32.9%, which is our headline unemployment rate.
Okay. So just to get clarity now, when you get your street vendors, hawkers, etc., where do they fall?
Those are in the informal sector.
Okay.
So in the 16.8 million, about 11 million are in the formal sector. 3.3 million, which represent about 19.9%, are in the informal sector, 1.1 million are in private households. There are people who assist in our homes, in our gardens, and in the kitchens. And then 930,000 are in agriculture. So I want to come back to the informal sector. The informal sector, 3.3 million that we are talking about who are employed, and those who account for 19.9% of the people who are employed. Those ones are people who are not VAT paying. So if they are not VAT paying...
VAT or PAYE?
No, VAT.
Okay.
Remember, if you work for a company that is VAT paying, we pick you up from enterprises that SARS supply us.
Okay.
So if you are not VAT paying, SARS will not know about you.
Okay.
Yeah. Remember, when you are VAT paying, it means you are registered with SARS. So even your workers will be able to pay any other form of taxes.
UIF and all those things. Okay, fine. Understood.
So now, when you are not VAT paying and you employ less than 5 people, you are informal. So we have about 1.1 million people that are in the informal sector in South Africa. Out of that is businesses. Those 1.1 businesses, they hire about 3.3 million people. So that is where we come up with the informal sector and how we define it. Now, having said so, when we take the 8.2 million people who are actively looking for employment, plus the 3.5 million people who are your discouraged work seekers. Remember, the discouraged work seekers are in the not economically active.
They've given up.
Yeah. And another 1 million who are in the other not economically active. Remember that 13.5 million that we spoke about, who when we interviewed them said, I didn't look for employment. Not because I'm discouraged, but if work came, I would have taken it. So the 8.2 million plus 3.5 million plus 1 million gives us 12.7 million. The 12.7 million is what we call the expanded nature of our unemployment, which returns an unemployment rate of about 43.1%. So we release two numbers when we release unemployment in terms of the rates. We release the formal unemployment rate, which is your 32.9%, which is in the National Development Plan, because the National Development Plan says we will track the narrow definition. And then we also release the expanded definition to make South Africans understand the exact nature of the unemployment challenge.
Capitec CEO, former CEO now, what were his claims? How did he get to this 10% employment that he claims?
Well,
unemployment.
I won't know much of his reasons, but amongst others that he has said is that he's got about 25 million customers. And he sees many of them are banking money every week, about 1,000 rands every week. But that is what we call aggregation bias. And I'll explain aggregation bias.
Please.
He looked at customers who are banking with him, whether those customers are having accounts with other banks and they transfer money to Capitec, or whether those customers are getting money in the form of remittances from other sources in their families and they go and bank with Capitec. All he sees is money coming in. But
okay. So it could be an allowance.
It could be anything.
Okay.
But he also is looking at his customers, those that bank with him. That's what causes aggregation bias. You can't, by looking at you and I, today seated here in this boardroom, and you say South Africans are having the best boardrooms in South Africa, there's no poverty in South Africa. So you can't, by looking at only the Capitec customers, and assume it applies and sustains for everyone in South Africa. So how do we collect employment and unemployment? Firstly, we have what we call a two-staged sampling. So we make sure that every settlement type is represented. So you have the suburbs that are represented. You have the farms. You have informal sector. You have townships. You also have villages that are represented. So when you have looked at data like that, it means that you will be able to reach out to everyone. But also because your Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal have larger populations, your sample has more people that you find in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal and the Western Cape than you would pick up in the Northern Cape. Because even if you were to sample many in the Northern Cape, you would still not get much people. There are more people here. So when you look at that and you have all settlement types, when you release an unemployment number, it is representative of the entire South Africa. You can't, by saying I'm looking at the clients that bank with FNB and make a conclusion for all South Africans.
So what's your guys' sample size?
About 30,000.
Okay.
So 30,000 households, which gives us about 86,000 persons to 116,000 persons at any given point. And then we elevate it. Remember, we spoke about the population of the country, 63 million. So we use what we call weights to elevate it to the population of the country.
Okay, so that it's a fair reflection
of what is sustaining in the society. But having said that, I also have listened to some people saying Zimbabwe has an unemployment rate of 6%. So because they include the informal sector. And these are people who are saying we don't include the informal sector. And I'm saying for more than 2 decades, since 2008, when we've been releasing the quarterly labor force survey or the labor force survey, we have been releasing the informal sector. So I'm wondering, where are these people reading in our reports? Because it's there, quarter in, quarter out. But look at, if Zimbabwe had an unemployment rate of 6%, then people from Zimbabwe would not be coming to South Africa.
Yes. So that was going to be my next question, that a lot of countries around us have lower unemployment rates than us, but everyone comes here for work. How does that work? Where are we off?
I can't explain how they calculate theirs, but all of us use what we call the International Labour Organization guidelines. And we as South Africa, we are amongst the lead members that contribute to the ILO. And many of them are even sent to us to come and share what we do with themselves in terms of how we deal with issues of employment, unemployment. So one thing I can assure you, TJ, is that the responsibility of the Statistician-General is not to tell us, a country, what we want to hear. Is to make us understand what we need to know. If South Africans wanted me to tell them what they want to hear, I would tell them the economy is growing at 8%. I would tell them unemployment is sitting at 5%. I would tell them fertility is actually sitting at a number acceptable together with other countries. Your Eastern Cape and your Limpopo are not showing many people who are earning their income on grants because these people are earning from their salaries. But I can't tell. I have to tell the story as it is. If I take a picture of you today and I take another picture of you 10 or 20 years from now, I can't say, no, I'll doctor your picture 20 years from now to look like how it looked when you were 6 years old. I only tell the picture. And we don't sit in a corner somewhere, as let's say, and beat the numbers until they confess. We go to the people and ask them. So this is what people who are in South Africa are telling us. So unless we are saying people in South Africa are on wholesale lying, and then you and I can walk out of here and go to Tembisa, to Alexander, and see if people are not sitting in the streets.
With regards to the economic growth, obviously we have the plan of 2030. In order to reach that, what growth percentage do we need to achieve every year?
TJ, my Sangoma and Mhlawuyalingana, when I go and see them and they throw the bones, they will tell me, be careful of the following issues, but they won't tell me be careful of TJ. They just tell me on average. So the job of the Statistician General is not to tell the country what must be done, it's to measure. And I'll tell you why I don't have to tell the country what must be done. Assume I were to tell our country, do the following, because everyone knows I deal with numbers. If I tell them, do the following, the economy will grow at this level, we will be able to arrest unemployment. And then it happens that when I go and measure, I don't find what I told the country to do. I would start hiding numbers. And when I hide numbers, I would have lost independence. And a statistician general or a chief statistician of a country who has lost independence is a very dangerous one to their country. So there are two things I can't lose. I can never lose independence. That is why I don't have to tell the story that the country wants to hear. I only tell what needs to be known. But I also have to defend our methods. So one of the things we're talking about on issues of employment, unemployment, is that our methods are there. We release them every quarter when we release our numbers, whether it's in the census, in the economy, or anything. One of the commentators or people who always say, stats say, you are not doing things right. They've never released their methods. So when people don't release their methods, what is it that is in the black box that they are protecting? But back to your question on the economy, it's not me. It's what the National Development Plan has said way back 2011, 2012, that we need to be growing at about 5%. And remember at the time, we said if we grow at about 5%, we would bring poverty down.
Yes.
And then would bring by 2020, our unemployment would be sitting at 14%. But by 2020, our unemployment was sitting at about 29%. And we are saying that by the year 2030, as if the year 2030 would never arrive. The year 2030 is just about 5 years down the line. We said we want our unemployment rate to be sitting at 6%. It is now sitting at 32.9%. So imagine if I were to tell the country what they want to hear. I would start saying, no, our unemployment is sitting at 6% or 10%. So, but back to issues. We said we wanted our economy to grow at 5%. That was way back 2011, 2012. Before the global economic meltdown, that is before 2008, our economy in about 2006, the highest it went was 5.6%.
Okay.
After that, we went on a slump, 2009. When the bigger economies were struggling in 2008, we were affected only in 2009. You and I know, I grew up in the village. When it rains in the mountains, the valleys will get water later. So that's what happened. In 2009, our economy went on a slump. It went in a negative growth. It recovered. And after that, the highest we have seen was in 2011. Our economy grew at 3.2%.
Okay.
It has never grown higher than that. So go back to 2006, 2007 at the time. We were riding at the height of the commodity boom. And then come back 2011, we were benefiting much from developments, especially your investments, your gross fixed capital formations that were benefiting from the 2010.
Okay.
That is
So
why so now, after that, our economy went on a slump, negative in 2020, as you would expect. From second quarter of 2020, our economy struggled because we had sealed all the borders to save lives. And you will remember, our economy at the time, prior to that, real GDP, was sitting at about 1.15 trillion. Then for the first time, it went below a trillion. In the second quarter of 2020, it went to about 950 billion. And then it has recovered. But let's go back to the year 2020. Our economy went on a negative growth, 6%. And then 2021, it grew by 4.8%. But that was an aberration because we were coming from a very low base.
Yes.
So that is why we went to 4.8%. After that, come 2022, we grew by 1.9%. And then we have grown by about 0.6% in the year 2024.
Where do you think we should be?
It's not my job to say where we should be. It's the job of the planners. I'm like the Sangoma in Mhlawiyalinga.
Okay.
I only measure. Yeah. If I start dabbling into the policy space, I will not be able to measure independently. So policymakers and captains of industry, so cabinet, parliamentarians, captains of industry can sit and talk about where they want it to be. Once they have said where they want it to be, I'll go and measure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Poverty. With regards to poverty, how do we define poverty?
We have three lines that measure poverty. Okay. You have what we call the food poverty line. So the food poverty line is the amount of money that you need to be able to sustain you with an average number of calories that you need to sustain your body. So we work with the World Health Organization to know that an average adult would need this number of calories. A child would need this number of calories. That is why children must eat so that they don't go into stunting, wasting, and the like. So when you look at your population, remember in the 63.1 million, about 14 million are children 0 to 14 years. Okay. 15 years to 34 years, we're talking about 20 million. And then adults are sitting at about 6.6 million. Those are the ones, the elderly actually. They are sitting at about 6.6 million. Those are those that are older than 60 years. So if you look, our population is relatively young. Because when you take the 0 to 14 years, and then those, I said it's 14 million, they are about 17 million, my apologies. If you combine them with the 20 million, 15 to 34 years, they go to more than 62% of the population of the country. So we are relatively young. Our median age, if you stretch the population from the youngest person to the oldest person, it's about 28 years. It was 22 years way back, 1996. We are sitting at 28 years. So it shows you that we have a relatively younger population. Having said so when you look at the food poverty line, you look at the number of calories that a person should have to sustain themselves for daily living.
Does that differentiate between women, men, black, white? Is there a different number, or is it one straight number for everyone?
It is, we use the average.
Okay.
But of course, we know what people are eating. Because in the income and expenditure survey, we look at what they are spending on. So if you look, your Africans particularly, they eat more like your pap, they eat more your cereals and the like. And then your white population group is eating meat, red meat, and they eat fish and the like, and they eat more healthier foods than what you would see amongst the Africans. The Africans and the coloreds eat almost the same. Their expenditure patterns are the same. They live to eat and travel. They stay far away from places of work, so they have to travel to places of work, and then they eat. So most of the money they earn, they spend it on traveling and food. Okay. Whereas amongst the Indian population group is catching up with the white population group in South Africa. But the white population group particularly eats healthy, and then they travel less because they are closer. They are in the urban centers. They are closer to places of work. So now, when you look at your what we call the food poverty line, you look at the average of all these foods that the people are eating. And then you then calibrate it against the number of calories that an average person should eat based on your population, how many young people you have, how many old people you have. Okay. So you come with what we call the food poverty line. So anyone who earns per person per month in a household, who earns less than that amount, about 695 rands, would be considered to be poor. in a household. Food poor.
Okay. 695.
695.
Okay.
Then we go to what we call the lower bound poverty line. The lower bound poverty line is where people have to make a decision whether they need to get food or other basic essentials, like whether they need to take money to transport their kids to school or they need to give money to their children for pocket money. So that is about 1,063 rands. If you earn less than that per person, so if you go to a household and there are 2 parents and they have 2 children and they earn less than 4,000, you would consider them poor according to the lower bound poverty line.
Okay.
Then you have the upper bound poverty line, which goes to about 1,500, where people can choose to have some luxury, a basic luxury that they have. So according to the National Development Plan, we track what we call the lower bound poverty line. Okay. So this number,
695.
No, the 695 is the food poverty line. The lower bound is about 1,063.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which in a family of 5 people would be about 5,200 rands. Right. Now, having said so, when you track what we call the lower bound poverty line, and we don't have what we call headline poverty numbers since 2015, because we conducted the income and expenditure survey in 2013-2014. We were able to compute poverty line in 2015. The last one that we have just conducted in 2022-2023, we are still computing the poverty line, headline poverty line. So we still do not know the number of people that are poor beyond 2015. So the figures that I'm going to give you are 2015 numbers.
Jeez, okay.
So whereas prices, we are able to see them because we collect the CPI every month. Consumer Price Index. So what people are spending and how prices are shifting, we're able to measure it. And that's why we're able to give you this. Those lines I was giving you in monetary terms, we have them every year because we have the CPI. So now in 2015, 25% of our population was below the food poverty line.
So do you recall the population in 2015?
I wouldn't recall exactly, but what I will tell you is that in 1996, our population was 46 million. In 2011, our population was 51 million. In 1996, 46 million. Okay. 2001, 51 million. And in 2011, 55 million. So we would have been about 57 million there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
25% was poor, almost about 14 million, food poor.
Okay.
And the majority of them, you find them, maybe not the majority, because I can't say the population of the Northern Cape is small. But when you use what you call proportion within the Northern Cape, you find that people who are food poor, you find them the most in the population of the West, the Northern Cape. Only when you look at that as a proportion, okay. the proportion of the population of the Northern Cape that is food poor is relatively higher than what you see in other provinces. And the majority of them are women. But when you then unpack nationally, the majority of them are women and Black African women. Okay. Yeah. So now, having said so, 40% of our population was what we call was below the lower bound poverty line, which would mean that because we are tracking it in the National Development Plan, those are the people that are poor. So you would say out of about 58 million, slightly more than 20 million, almost 22 million people were considered to be poor in our country. So because we track the lower bound poverty line, I will end it there. But I want to come back to the recent income and expenditure survey that we have just collected. Because that is the one that helps us to know or to compute poverty. So if you look at the average household income of an African family, it's sitting at 128,000 rands. And then that of the colored population group is sitting at about 240,000 rands. The Indian Asian population is sitting at about 387,000 rands. The one for whites is sitting at about 645,000 rands. So it means Africans are earning 1/6 of what the white population group is earning. So when you look at the expenditure, the gap between the expenditure for your Africans is 30,000 rands at household level. The gap between income and expenditure for the colored population group is about 50,000 rands, or 60,000 rands almost. And the one for the Indian Asian population group is sitting at about 100,000 rands. The one for the white population group is sitting at 250,000 rands. This is money that they can spend. So when you look at the income at household level, 68.8% comes from salaries and wages. And then others come from imputed rental amounts. If you own a house and you find that you have paid it up, what would you consider as your income if you were renting? You were renting from yourself. And then all the way, about 3%, 5 to 3% comes from capital. And it's whites who are investing the most to get income from capital because they are
generational.
Yeah, but also look at their disposable income. It's sitting at about 250,000 rands. So they are able to invest it. So when you look at income, 68.8% comes from salaries. But when you unpack it even further, only 2 provinces are higher than national average. That is, the national average is about 52%.
Okay.
Only Gauteng and the Western Cape are higher. The other provinces, particularly your Limpopo and your Eastern Cape, they have about 38 to 40% coming from salaries. The rest comes from what we call grants, remittances, and the like. But remember, when we spoke about the structure of our economy, we said fertility is the highest in Limpopo and the Eastern Cape, yet income doesn't come from salaries. So what you're seeing there is that you see children in rural provinces, your Eastern Cape, Limpopo, KwaZulu-Natal, Northwest, Mpumalanga, living more on grants than they are living on what their parents are earning. If any other, they get remittances that the parents are sending from urban centers. So when you look at issues of poverty, you should not look only at your poverty lines, your 25% food poverty line, 40% poverty line, because we derive that coming out of what we call income. In terms of the guidelines of the World Bank as well as the IMF and the United Nations, that 40%, 25% is what we call money metric. It used to be $2 per day, but they've just informed us now. The World Bank has just written to me to say we are moving now to $3 a day.
Okay.
So having said that, if you look
in rands, that's
that's about
60.
60 almost, 58, 60 rand, per day. So now, if you look at that and you look at the provinces that your Eastern Cape, Limpopo, and the rural provinces, that tend not to, they have higher fertility, but their income largely comes from grants and remittances than from salaries. So it means the kids there are being looked after by money that comes from grants and remittances. Yet, on the other hand, when you look at the 2 provinces, so let us look at our economy. Mm-hmm. When you look at what you call the per capita GDP, and you look at, it means you're looking at the size of the economy of that province versus the population. The 2 provinces that are lying are very low. The ones that are that are higher than national average are Gauteng and the Western Cape. Remember, their fertility is at the lowest in the country.
So out of curiosity, where's KZN? Are they
KZN is below the national average.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'll come to another point on the economy. Then when you go and look at Limpopo and the Eastern Cape has the lowest per capita GDP. Now, it means that the economy of the rural provinces is not sufficiently enough to carry the weight of the populations that we see in those provinces. Now, when you look at poverty, these are some of the issues that are driving people out of Limpopo to Gauteng, out of the Eastern Cape to the Western Cape, as well as to other urban centers. Now, let us look at our economies, and I'm talking about the provinces. So, about 33 to 35% of our economy is dominated by Gauteng. That is why its population is its share of population is 25%. It's sitting at about 33 to 35% of nominal GDP. Okay. It is followed by KwaZulu-Natal at 16%. But KwaZulu-Natal follows Gauteng, yet it has a bigger population to look after. So that is why its GDP per capita is lower than national average. Then it is followed by the Western Cape. The Western Cape, it was sitting at 12%. It is now sitting at 13%. So what we are seeing, particularly in the Western Cape, is that one, the population of the Western Cape is growing relatively faster. In 1996, the most populous province, as I have said, was KwaZulu-Natal, followed by Gauteng, followed by Eastern Cape, followed by Limpopo, followed by the Western Cape. Western Cape was number 5. Today, Western Cape is number 3 in terms of the size of its economy, its share of economy in the country. So, it is number 3 in the economy as well. So remember, in population, it's at 7.6 million. Now, in terms of the economy, it's sitting at about 13% share of nominal GDP. And I said it was at 12%. So what we are seeing is that the economy of the Western Cape is growing. It's inching closer towards KwaZulu-Natal.
Now, sorry, just to think on that before I forget. Inequality, because I think a lot of the things you have said have touched that. How do we calculate inequality, and how do we end up being the country with the highest inequality?
Okay, we use what we call the Gini coefficient. Simply put, the Gini coefficient is the gap between the haves and the have-nots. And we use it from 0 to 1. If it is 0, it means the society is equal. If it's inching towards 1, the society is unequal. So we are sitting with an inequality of above 0.5%. I think it should be about 0.51%. I stand to remember that.
Okay.
But the ones that have the lowest Gini coefficient are the white population group, followed by the Indian Asian population group, meaning that they are not very much unequal. The colored...
Within the groups?
Yeah, okay. Within their own group. Yes. The coloreds and the Africans, the black Africans, have relatively higher inequality, meaning that they are unequal. Prior to 1994, and I won't remember the figure, the coloreds and the Africans were more equal. But with the advent of democracy, and you see more people entering the middle class amongst the colored population group as well as the black African population group, that has created a gap because many of them still remain in the villages. By the way, one of the things that is the biggest challenge, especially in relation to employment, unemployment, is the fact that the spatial arrangements of apartheid are still prevalent in our country. The way Johannesburg was built to exclude largely women and it's still the way. The structure of it doesn't allow women to readily come. If you look at the housing structures that you have, a man can arrive in the Northwest in the mines and set up an informal settlement. He can arrive here in Gauteng, set up an informal settlement, go and stay in Mkuku, stay under the bridge. Women can't enjoy that. They can't.
What's the difference?
Yeah. The fact is that women, everywhere in the world, women have to be secure. They have to be in a place that is safe. Okay. And men can easily stay under the bridges. I was driving between Pretoria and here, I saw a man who was relieving himself on the roadside, and which is unfortunate that it has to happen. But the issue is that how many people that you find in informal settlements that are relatively men than women? You go to the Northwest around Rustenburg, Marikana, you find more men than women. That's why now the unemployment rate of the Northwest is rising higher than that of the Eastern Cape. So having said that, we were talking about manimetric poverty. So manimetric poverty, what we saw between 2006 and 2009 to 2011, it was declining. But between 2011 and 2015, it started to rise. It moved from about 36.4% or 36.6% all the way to 40%.
Do we know what drove it? The reason behind the increase?
It's income and expenditure. Remember, we use income and expenditure.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you have people who are earning, but of course, when they spend those gaps I was telling you, the 30,000 rands between Africans, the 250,000 rands for the white population group. Okay. Now, after 2015, we don't know where it is because we are coming out now in August this month or next month with the new poverty numbers out of the 2022-2023 income and expenditure survey. So now let us go back to what we call another measure of poverty, the multidimensional poverty. Okay. Multidimensional poverty, we don't use you see, when you use the $2 per day, $2 is standard. We know whether you earn it or not. We can be able to pick you up. But there are people who will tell you, I'm poor because I'm not highly educated. They will tell you, I'm poor because I don't have health care. I'm poor because my parents have died. We even have words in our African languages that to people who have lost their parents, they are poor. Now, if you ask me, the manimetric poverty line you can compare with other countries because the $1, $2 is the same for every country when you translate into their local currency. But when you come to what we call multidimensional poverty, it's subjective. It's based on how one defines their poverty. So in the international measure of multidimensional poverty, we use largely things like your education, your health, your income. We use them as a measure for multidimensional poverty. Okay. So, for example, if you go to countries in the Middle East or some of them in North Africa, those that are your Islamic countries, they have contributions that they make to their population that is poor, different contributions. For example, in Mexico, you even get money for your internet based on where you are staying in different parts of the country. I think even here in our country, there were times that we were trying to put universal internet. If you go to the city of Tshwane, city of Johannesburg, eThekwini, you can pick up internet in the city. You don't just pick it up in the villages. So those issues where government steps in and put money, it means they take people out of poverty. Your free basic electricity, free basic water, refuse removal, and the like. They take people out of multidimensional poverty. So in South Africa, we don't use what the international one as multidimensional poverty, MPI. We have what we call SAMPI, South African Multidimensional Poverty Index.
Okay.
Because our unemployment is high, and because what we have added is the economic factor of employment. So what drives people to get employment is the levels of education. So let us look at unemployment. I'll take you a little back to unemployment. Graduate unemployment is sitting at about 10%. It hovers between 9.8% to about 10.2%. Other tertiary education unemployment for people who have a 6-month certificate, a 2-year certificate, 1-year certificate, their unemployment rate is sitting at about 22%.
Sorry, just on graduates.
Graduates are people,
undergrad, postgrad.
Yeah, whatever. As long as you have a diploma or a degree,
Okay.
which is your 3-year qualification, their unemployment is sitting at 10%.
Yes, okay.
Those with other tertiary qualifications, they could have done a 2-month certificate after matric or a 6-month certificate. They are not a graduate. Yeah, those ones, their unemployment rate is sitting at about 22%. So the unemployment rate is sitting now as of the first quarter 2025. Now we have we have gone all the way to the second quarter, but we'll be coming up with the numbers. It's sitting at 32.9%. But the unemployment rate for those with matric and less than matric is higher. Actually, less than matric is sitting at about 37.2%. So now, when it means that when people don't have education, they struggle to get employment. And we know that the years of schooling, that is, the more you spend in a schooling system, up to being a graduate or something, makes you able to take up a job. So years of schooling and employment are biggest contributors to poverty if you don't have them. They contribute to about 63% to poverty. So that is why, because already we have education included in the multidimensional poverty index. That is why we have pooled employment. That is why we have what we call SAMPI, South African Multidimensional Poverty Index. So in South Africa, way back in 2006, it was sitting at about 19%, about 17.9% to be exact. It dropped to about 12% about 2011. By 2015, it's sitting as the last reported at 7%, which is lower than the global average. The global average is 8%.
At that time or today?
At that time.
Okay.
It's 8%. So we are 1 percentage point lower. So what it means is that if government was not intervening with those free basic food, free basic electricity, food parcels, and the grants that they are giving. Remember, we have already spoken about your rural provinces, particularly your Eastern Cape and Western Cape, that get about 30 up to 32%, 38% income coming from grants. If government was not intervening, many people would be poor and many people would be susceptible to hunger. So what we are seeing, the more people register for grants as well as old age pension, the more people go out of poverty. Vulnerability to hunger declines. So what government is doing, and of course, don't ask me whether it's sustainable or not. I've been asked questions sometimes, TJ, whether the 350 rands that is being given to members of society is enough or not. When I'm saying the food poverty line is sitting at 695 rands and per person, and the lower bound is sitting at about 1,063. Don't ask me. My job is to measure. It's not to make policies. Obviously, you always cut your cloth. I mean, you make your dress according to the size of your cloth. So if National Treasury has more money, potentially they would give more money in the form of grants. But otherwise, if they don't have enough, they can't give enough.
We did have an interview once with Minister Zulu when she was Minister of Social Development. She said that their research indicated that households would pool the resources, which then maybe that's how I'd say gets them across the line in terms of the assistance. So, guys, you can check that episode with Minister Zulu.
They do. If you look at how we defined a household in 1996.
Okay.
We used to define household as people who pay their electricity bill and water bill separately. But remember, after that, beyond 1996, if you remember in Soweto and Mamelodi and your Tembisa, you used to have 2 rooms and a garage at the back. And the municipality used to insist that if someone, a different household stays there, they must have their meter. Now you are having what you call informal settlement at the back, what you call back rooms in the form of some mkuku. So people do indeed pull together to pay for electricity because the electricity is connected through the house and they pull together for water. So now our definition of household has changed. We define a household as people who eat from the same pot. Okay. So you go to the Western Cape, for example, in Khayelitsha, you have people staying in one house. They share water, electricity. They meet only in the kitchen. 1 bedroom is for one household. They cook their own food. One household, they cook their own food. A wife, husband, and children stay in the other room. They cook their own food. Even in the back rooms, the so-called yomkuku or shack at the back room, people cook their own food. Only when they cook together, we include them as one household. And a household doesn't have to be the same family. You and I may be brothers, but if I'm staying in Limpopo and you stay in Gauteng, we won't cook from the same pot. But you could be staying with a friend here and you cook from the same pot. You don't have to be blood related to be a household.
You know, just I guess we're going into the social issues now, which has triggered the curiosity. With regards to society and HIV in particular, is there a correlation between the economics, the poverty, and HIV?
We don't measure that. Remember, we don't measure the people's economic status. When we come and ask you whether you're working or you are earning, we release that in the form of your your income and expenditure. We release that in the form of employment. But we have never tried to link, because that would be an index and that would require policy positions, because it's not a question of being poor. You would also need to deal with issues of when people are poor, or where do they get their income? Do they get their income from government? Where do they get their support on health in terms of people in rural areas where they get free medical care and the like? After that, you would have to create an index that, are you saying that now that you are poor, in terms of a particular policy position, is the government responding enough in relation to whether you are HIV positive or not? That is not our space. Other people get your HSRC can measure that. You are raising a very critical point, TJ. Remember, we don't measure input indicators. So if you are built, I'll use the housing analogy. We don't measure how much money is put in building a house. We don't measure how much money you put in building a house. We don't measure how many bags you are using. We don't measure what process indicators. People who are building houses, how many houses they finish per week. We measure output, how many houses are built.
Okay. Yeah.
But we also measure outcomes. How many people access housing? What kind of housing? That's where our measures based. We don't measure impact, whether policies for HIV, for poverty are working. It's not our work. That's the work of the HSRC, the government departments, DPME and the like.
Okay, no, sorry. Context behind it was I did read an article that said that there has been or is likely to be an increase because NSFAS students haven't been paid, and they've made a correlation between I guess economic status and old blesser and HIV infections, etc. So, yeah, like you're saying, it's outside of your spectrum, but thought I'd give context there. But how are we as a state doing in terms of the HIV, addressing it?
Let us look at the only way we measure what we call causes of death.
Okay. Yes.
So we go to Home Affairs and get what you call the B1663 form. So when someone reports a death, the person, the deceased, they must get their fingerprint on that form, B1663. And the person who's reporting the death must put their fingerprint and their ID number. Okay, and then after that, the person who's reporting the death gets the death certificate, but they don't leave with that form. That form is sealed, and it's not even opened by Home Affairs. It's only opened by Statistician-General. So now, when we open, we look at what is taking the lives of people in South Africa. Generally, we still have your communicable diseases in the form of tuberculosis, influenza leading the most. And of course, if I want to put the structure of our population, in the 63 million people, about 51 million are Black Africans. So you're sitting with about 80%, 81% being Black African. Then it is followed by the colored population group, sitting at about 10%. The colored population group has now overtaken the white population group. The white population group has declined from about 9.3% in 2011. They are now sitting at 7.6% as the share of the population. I'll explain.
Have they declined because they reduced, or it was the colored population increasing more?
Well, firstly, the Africans are increasing. The colored population group is increasing. So the white population group, younger whites are leaving the country. Okay. And when young people leave, they leave with their fertility. Older people will not bear children. Young children will not bear children.
Fair enough.
So, but also, then come to the Indian Asian population group. It's the smallest. You're talking of about 1.7 million somewhere there. Having said that, then you come to look, when you look at causes of death, when you say tuberculosis or communicable diseases in the form of tuberculosis, and we're not talking about HIV. HIV is not leading. It's not. It's there amongst the top 10, but it's not your lead cause of death.
What are the top 3 leading?
Top 3 leading causes are your tuberculosis, your influenza, and diabetes mellitus.
Okay.
So when you look at
sugar.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you look at Black African males, from the ages of about 29 years, they are affected more by tuberculosis. When you look at Black African females, they were sitting at ages of about 55 and above being affected by diabetes. But now it's dropping down to 45 years. So this is a diseases of lifestyle. Diabetes and your cerebrovascular accidents in the form of stroke are diseases of lifestyle. Whereas if you look at the colored population group and the African population group, they show similar patterns. The Indian Asian population group as well as the white population group, the leading causes are more like diabetes, stroke, and the like. These are diseases of lifestyle. Now, coming back to where we have seen the highest number of deaths. So we spoke earlier about what drives our population is fertility. So we are talking of about 1.2 million, 1.2 million children born per annum. Of course, we have already spoken about where fertility is highest. And the concept of fertility, you need to understand it, is also a concept of within your own population. So that is why if you look at the population of Limpopo and the Eastern Cape, their population is not as big as what you see in Gauteng. So you could still say Chris Hani Baragwanath has the highest number of births per annum. But when you look at its population, it still doesn't explain fertility higher than national average. And especially that here in Gauteng, you have more men than women. This is the only province where you have more men than women because of migratory patterns. People leave their families to come and work here. It's also Gauteng being where you have more men than women. If you look at the children that are born in outer provinces, in rural provinces, they are born more in September because the men go back to their families in December, and the results will show in September. Yeah. Now, back to the issue that we are talking about. Way back 2005, 2006, the number of people who were dying was reaching about 660,000. And remember, it was at the beginning where people were starting to access ARVs. Now, the number of people who are dying has declined. It's sitting at about 540,000 per annum. It's because people are accessing ARVs and are living longer. Our prevalence of HIV/AIDS in our country is sitting at about 8%. So now, that HIV is causing more deaths. It's not as what we were seeing way back in 2006, 2007. But also, remember at the time, HIV was not a notifiable disease. So some doctors, they didn't write. Whereas now, doctors will readily write. But you must remember, you must understand the concept of death. There is what we call a primary cause and a secondary cause. Okay. If you beat me up now, you assault me, and I die of heart attack, and I know you're very kind, you're not going to assault me. But that's why I'm using you as an example. If you assault me and I die of heart attack, my primary cause of death is heart attack, but the secondary cause is assault. Okay. So now, what we are seeing is that we can't assume that because people, or you have people dying of tuberculosis, it's HIV AIDS, because not everyone who has tuberculosis is HIV positive. So we only know when it's notifiable. And remember, I told you our job is not to speculate, as let's say, is to measure. And the only better measure we have, it's those records, the B1663 forms that come from Home Affairs. So, but also, we do see that, and Department of Health will tell us the number of infections that are happening, especially amongst young people. But when those infections happen, unless we have gone to speak to those people and ask them who has infected them or potentially amongst their partners that they have had sexual relations with, we can't speculate. Okay. So look at the demographic health and survey. The last time people report honestly. That's why confidentiality is very important with our work. We measure you from life to death. You just will never know when we have been there, that we're there when you have died. But we will tell South Africans what has taken life. So in the demographic and health survey, we ask people if they have had sexual relations with a person outside their regular partner. Okay. And 5% of women, 6% of women indicated that they had done so. 12% of men indicated they had done so. But that they have done that helps the Department of Health to deal with other measures in terms of communicable diseases. But it doesn't mean that everyone who has sexual activity with a person outside their partner has gone to contract HIV/AIDS. So we don't speculate, we only measure.
Okay, so but just for clarity, you're saying that according to the stats, men cheat more than women. Just on a side note.
Well, that's what the stats are saying.
Okay.
But we take what people are saying. Okay. We don't take what they didn't say.
Okay. No, fine, fair enough. But
So
at
now,
least you have a number to it.
I will give you another one. If I come to you and remember, official statistics is very interesting. If I find you smoking a cigarette and I ask you, do you smoke? And you pull a cigarette and puff into the air and say, I don't smoke. I don't take what I see. I take what you say. Official statistics are based on what people are saying.
Okay.
I can't look at a mother and she has gained weight and assume she's expecting a child. We have to ask her if she's pregnant or not. That's official statistics. And official statistics, remember, that's why we have confidentiality. Talks about everything that is there in society. We follow you from birth to death. When you are born, we have to tell South Africans how many children are born. When you go to school, primary or secondary, we tell South Africans. When you go to university, when you go to start working, we tell South Africans. But when you go to work in a particular industry, we have to tell South Africans that you're working in a particular industry. We also measure the economy. A little bit just going back to the economy. We spoke about the size of Gauteng and everything. But one thing that we are also seeing beyond the years that we have spoken from 2020 all the way, our economy is not growing sufficiently enough. I mean, the last one we released, first quarter of 2025, it grew at 0.1%.
What should it grow at?
It's not my job to say what it should grow at. My job is to measure what it's growing on.
Okay.
Yeah. What it should grow at is a space for policymakers. Okay. Now, when it's growing at 0.1%, it is not even 1%. It's one step towards 1%. It's very close to a zero, meaning that it can easily fall below a zero and go into the negative. And an economy that is not growing will not create enough jobs.
Yeah, I hope we deal with that soon. But crime. There's this narrative that we are a violent nation, that we're high in crime. What do the numbers say?
We are not hiding crime as South Africa.
No, we're high in crime.
We've
got a high crime rate. Yeah.
If you want to talk about high crime rates, go to other countries. Go to countries like Brazil, go to Mexico. Then you will know what high crime rates are. But what is happening is our reporting. One, we report crime from two angles.
Okay.
From the South African Police Services as well as from Stats SA.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is what happens. Everything that the Statistician-General signs on is official statistics.
Okay.
So whatever there's a discussion we had before we started going on air, you and I, where I said, I'm the Statistician-General of South Africa, but I'm also the head of Stats SA. What happens here is that, remember, official statistics doesn't happen only at Stats SA. While we measure official statistics from Stats SA, Department of Agriculture collects data. The police, every day, day in, day out, when people go report crime, they record it. A nurse at a clinic records everyone who comes what they are sick of. So what we do, we graduate such statistics to be official statistics. Okay. Statistics from agriculture, Department of Agriculture is not yet official. And of course, data that nurses and teachers are collecting at school are not yet official data until they come to Stats SA. But the data that the South African Police Services are releasing are official statistics delegated by the Statistician-General. And they have to meet certain prerequisites. Amongst those is that data should not be released by the minister. It should be released by an official designated. Okay. Because when data is released by a minister may be attacked by other political parties, not because of the data they are releasing,
Okay, so it's not that they're a politician, it's because of politics.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, even from the same political party, you will hear in political parties that so-and-so in that political party is center-left, center-right, and the like. People could be attacked even from the same political party. So you need an independent functionary. That is why even we at Statistician, we don't drive politics, we don't drive policy, we don't even talk about targets where the economy should be growing. We just measure. Okay. Now, having said that, the South African Police Services crime statistics are official. Firstly, it was the national, and now we have just started working and allowing them to go on. And I mean, it was the annual. Now it's the quarterly.
Okay. Yes.
So, having said that, police only talk about crimes that have been reported to them. That is why we have to do in our other survey that deals with governance, justice governance. We have what we call the victims of crime, where we ask members of the households if they have experienced any crime. Whether they have reported it with the police or not, it's immaterial. But we also ask them if they have reported the crime. So, for example, murder is highly reported. Because even if the family doesn't report it, society will report it, the police will be there and they start us. It's at about 100%. Okay. Sexual violence is reported at about 85%. But things like burglary. A house burglary is when you are not in and someone breaks in and steals. It's not reported. And home robbery, sometimes people, home robbery is when you are there and someone comes and robs you.
So on that, I was going through one of the reports and it said that, fine, apart from there being periods when houses are broken into, that male households are broken into more than female households.
Yeah, but one of the things that we do pick up, and that comes from SAPS.
Okay.
But one thing that we see is, if you look, male-headed households, and I want you to understand the context of that. You go to rural areas and villages, crime is relatively lower. You come to the cities and urban areas, crime is relatively higher. Of course, there are, according to SAPS, police stations that record highest crimes even when they are in the rural areas. So, who are the people? Which households who leads the households in urban centers? It's largely male.
Oh, okay.
They leave their families in rural areas and they come and stay in urban centers. So that is why you find that someone, even if you stay in an informal settlement, they know that they might break in and they will find a cell phone or a radio or something. Okay. Whereas in the rural areas, you will readily, it's not that they won't find anything, but also our structure, the structure of our society. In rural areas, people generally know one another. I mean, I grew up knowing people and families, 2-3 villages across the field, up to 10 kilometers away. You come to the cities. In the same estate, people don't know one another. They know that that vehicle belongs to my estate, but they don't know the owner of the vehicle.
Even the name.
Yeah. Now, they don't even know the person who stays 2 houses down the road. People in cities and urban centers don't greet each other much. In the rural areas, people come as early as 6 o'clock, 6:30, greet you. How are you? They want to inquire after your health. You know their children. But back to issues of crime. The fact is, as a country, we report openly about crime. One, from SAPS administrative records, but also we go and ask the households. So even if it was a notion that, and it's not the case, SAPS is not hiding the numbers. They are reporting as reported. But also, even if it was a notion that some crimes are hidden, the fact that we go to households and ask would still report and indicate that these are the crime levels.
Oh, okay. But so just for clarity, I wasn't saying they were hiding. I was saying that we've got high crimes. But just for me personally, do you not think that we report too much? In the sense that, I mean, you get I'm not going to mention other countries, but there's some countries that coronavirus, they had 1 million infections one day, next day it was down to 50, next day 0. And we are very transparent. But do you not think we're too transparent to the point that it starts to harm us, whether it is an investment destination, a tourist destination, that we just give out too much information?
TJ, I would rather have a transparent government and a transparent nation than a government that hides things from their people. And journalists have to go and dig, and it embarrasses government when it comes out.
100%. Agreed.
So the second issue is that assume government was not transparent enough, and you have a status that is talking to members of the public, and people are reporting and are indicating, we would have a disjuncture between what people are experiencing and what is sustaining. And that would cause serious credibility issues. So if I was an investor, I would rather go and invest in a country that is transparent than a country that is not transparent. But we know that investors apply their minds to different settings that occur at any given point in time.
So 100%, I 100% agree. Transparency, accountability, it all should be there, and there is a correlation between them. But it's the element of moderation and something. Don't you think we're a bit too much?
Truth should not be moderated. Okay. The reality should not be moderated. The sun rises from the east, and no matter how much the clouds try to darken it, it will find a way of having its rays seeping through and shining the earth.
Okay, fine, fair enough. But in closing, what is the biggest myth that you've come across that we know to be one thing, but the numbers say something else?
Nothing has ever surprised me with numbers. I've lived throughout my life in the space of numbers. Not only working here in South Africa, I've worked with different countries. We talk about Stats SA, not myself as a person. Colleagues at Stats SA are actually sought after on the African continent and even other countries where we share our experiences. We are amongst the top 5 statistical agencies in the world. You ask me, the staff members that we lose from Stats SA leave to go and work for your Stats New Zealand. They work for the World Bank, for the IMF, the United Nations, and the like. So I've lived through numbers throughout my life. I've seen numbers tell a story, and nothing has ever surprised me. And one thing that I have always said is that it's always better to tell the story. If we see improvements in society, we must report them. And we see any challenges, we must report them so that we can have a target towards which to work rather than hide them. And members of the public, let me also thank them very much for the way they report honestly to us. Everything we report on at Stats SA, we get information from members of the public as well as the enterprises, the firms and the like. They report honestly. I mean, we ask them sometimes difficult questions. We sometimes want to talk to people one-on-one. Once you are 15 years and above, we separate you, we talk to you on, especially if it's sensitive matters we need to talk about. And people report honestly, and we really appreciate that so much. So this is a country and a nation at work, and Stats SA will continue to measure.
Thank you, not only for making time for us, but for doing your job with integrity, with transparency. We'll debate how much should be, but we appreciate it.
TJ, no need to thank me. It's our job. You ask me, you can't praise a fish for swimming. If a fish stops swimming, it will die. Every day of its life, it has to swim.
But it should get recognition.
Thank you.
Yeah, guys, you've heard. Thank you for participating in the Census and all other research. Thank you. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, comment. Let us know what you'd like to hear from, who you'd like to hear. And that's it. Tune in. Palatable Politics.